How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the channel where we talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. My name is Miles Gutierrez. Thank you for joining me today. We're going to be rewinding the clock back to 2014 when the first Godzilla film, directed by Gareth Edwards, hit the big screen. And boy, was I really excited for this movie because the trailer looked absolutely amazing. This was going to be a new look at Godzilla, and we were going to be starting off the MonsterVerse in a big way. And well, it hit big at the box office. That's really the only thing big about this movie. I remember going into this movie really excited, hearing some mixed things about it, but really was curious to see what they were going to do. And I just came out semi disappointed because even though I don't hate this movie, it kind of left me wanting a little bit more and just felt like I was being lied to in the marketing. So in the marketing for this movie, Bryan Cranston was everywhere. He was the main focal point for this movie, and I think that is what everybody was going into this Godzilla movie for, not just for Godzilla, but because Bryan Cranston was coming hot off of Breaking Bad, and we wanted to see what this new take on Godzilla was going to be. Let me go ahead and get started with the things that I really liked about this movie, because rewatching it for the first time in quite a while, there's not a lot of things that I loved in this movie as much as I did back in 2014, and it's crazy to think that this movie is about to turn 10 years old, so that makes me feel a little bit old. So starting off with the things that I really like about this movie, the first 30 minutes of this movie, when we have the interactions between Aaron Taylor Johnson and Bryan Cranston trying to figure this whole dilemma out, trying to figure out what's actually going on, because they're being lied to, saying that there's a contamination around the place where they used to live. A lot of people speculate that it's earthquakes, but Bryan Cranston knows that it's not just a simple earthquake, because earthquakes are unpredictable. This was timed, this wasn't predicted, it happened at a certain time. So he has a lot of questions going on around surrounding not only about what actually happened at the plant, but also wanting closure from his wife's death. And that interaction, those first 30 minutes between Aaron Taylor Johnson and Bryan Cranston, I thought that is where the movie was hitting its stride. I thought that is where the movie was a little bit more engaging. And I know that going forward in the MonsterVerse, and more so on the creature aspects of these movies, the human characters aren't really what you go for in these movies. It's just more so a lot of creature fights. And if that's what you want, then you're probably going to be disappointed with this movie, because a lot of this movie is centered around the human characters. And while I think it starts off strong having this dilemma, I was really caring about these characters at this central point. And then you also have Ken Watanabe and Sally Field trying to figure out what's actually going on, even though they actually know what's going on, trying to keep this on the hush hush so nobody knows exactly what's going on. I thought that is where the movie was a little bit more engaging for me. I thought that is where a lot of the human elements worked for me a lot more. And I'm not sure if it's because I just barely got spoiled with Godzilla Minus One, where you had a perfect balance of both character drama and the monster fights. That is the best movie where it balances both tones at the same time. And I'm pretty sure it's because I got spoiled with Godzilla Minus One. Now watching Godzilla, there was some emotional depth in that opening sequence, and then a little bit more moving forward, but it wasn't as engaging as it was in the opening. So on those aspects, there are some character moments here and there that I really enjoyed. Plus, once we get the monster fights, that is where the movie hits its stride, and that is where it's a little bit more engaging, but there's not much about it. Plus, I think the cinematography and Gareth Edwards, to a certain degree, direction for this movie, I thought was hitting on all cylinders. He did something interesting in here, even though it was a little bit more focused on the human side than it did on the monster fights. So on the direction side, I thought Gareth Edwards did bring his sense of style here, and I thought the visuals were great. Moving into things that really disappointed me, once we get rid of Walter White, it becomes a little bit less engaging, and quite frankly, it becomes a lot more boring than I remember it being, because I remember watching this in theaters and being engaged with it from beginning to the end, and I just wanted to get ready to the creature fights. And while Godzilla is absolutely fantastic, I think this, before Godzilla Minus One, I thought this was the most frightening that Godzilla had ever been. I thought he was a huge presence whenever he was on screen, but we cut away from him too much to news footage, to different characters, and it doesn't give you what you came for, because you came for Godzilla, you came to see Godzilla fight monsters, and we barely get any of that. You see bits and pieces, and once we see Godzilla in full frame, He's in it for like 5 seconds, and then we cut to something else. And that is where a lot of my disappointment for this movie comes, because even though the final fight for this movie is absolutely fantastic, and you have a lot of fun when Godzilla is wreaking havoc, he's fighting, he's using his atomic blast. Those moments are great, but they are so far in between. We go from charisma change from Bryan Cranston over to Aaron Taylor Johnson, and while I think he shines in supporting character roles than he does in leading roles, I've come to grow an appreciation for Aaron Taylor Johnson as a supporting character. He was absolutely fantastic in Bullet Train. He was great in Tenet, and I think that is where he shines, because he does not have any leading charisma in here, and that is where the movie kind of suffers a little bit. Almost every single line that Aaron Taylor Johnson delivers in here is kind of monotone, and it's hard for you to get behind this character. Even though there are the qualities about this character that you can like, he's not really somebody that you really want to follow. So on those aspects, that is kind of where the movie dips quality for me. Even though I love the final fight between Godzilla and Moto, I really love all those sequences, and I think the final act for this movie really shines. But everything leading up to that is just a huge disappointment. It leaves you wanting more, and watching it for the first time in quite a while, it doesn't hold up for me as much as it did the first time. There are quality things I liked about it. There are directions in here that I thought would have worked. It just didn't work in the way the movie wanted it to work. But overall, I'm going to go ahead and give Godzilla a 5 out of 10. It's not an awful movie. It's just a movie that makes you want more, and it just doesn't deliver on the things that you're going for. But those are my thoughts on 2014's Godzilla. Did this movie disappoint you, or is this one that you absolutely love? Go ahead and drop your thoughts in the comments below, and I'll catch you guys for the next video.